Hello everybody. I'm Manny from the Western Mass Fly Fisherman, and I'm just going to start my thread. Remember in class we needed a little bit of an open shank because we still have to shape our head. So I'm going to start my thread about 2/3 of the way back, or about 1/3 of the way back I should say. Cut off my excess and take my thread all the way to tail so I can tie in my turkey tail. And again, tail position on this particular hook is bar point. So I'm just going to take my thread all the way back to bar point. And stop there at a 1/2 inch. I've already pre-cut my tail slips of turkey. Pick them up. And again, just in class, as we said in class, we want to align our tips. Once that's done, going to measure. It's not a very long tail. Going to stand our thread straight up, bring our slips right up against the thread. We want this right on top of the hook shank. Bring the thread down and around and up, pulling on only on the upstroke, locking our tail in. Now I'm going to trim using my working scissors. I'm going to trim the slips, holding slightly forward, come in and cut them at an angle. We want to tie everything on tapers. So now I'm going to take my thread and run it up to our tie-in point and 1/2 inch. As we said in class, we 1/2 inch between every procedure. Take my tinsel, which was supplied to you in the kit bags. And as you remember, when we tied it, we always, taking my working scissors, we cut our tinsel at an angle. Stand my thread straight up. And I have the gold side, this is mylar, so I have the gold side up. Take a couple of wraps to lock it in. Bend my little tab back. And wrap in front. Couple of wraps in front. Now I wrap back, locking it in. And now I'm going to form, there we go. Now I'm going to form the body, which is gold tinsel. So I wrap back all the way to tail, no overlap. Once I get to tail, lock that down. And wrapping forward, again, I do not want any overlap. And I'm going to take it all the way to my thread. And like we did in class, we'll execute a thread pinch. Again, taking my working scissors, I'm going to come in and cut at an angle. Bend the tab back. Okay, wrap in front. And then wrap back over it, binding it down and locking it in. 1/2 inch it. The next thing we're going to tie in is our underwing, which is squirrel tail. I'm going to take a little piece of the squirrel tail. Remember, we have to trim close to the hide. So I'm just going to reach in with my scissors. And I'm going to come in close to the hide. Cut a small chunk of tail off. This is gray squirrel tail. And I want to clean again, we want to always keep that fluff out of the butts of the material when we're tying it in. Okay? Just going to line them a little better. Now you can use this in a hair stacker. but I'm not going to take the time to do that. But if you want to make a prettier fly, the fish don't really care about it. I'm going to measure it so it's roughly close to the tail, tip of the tail. Pinch it firmly, bring my thread up and over my squirrel tail with a firm pinch. I'm holding it. I then pull up, binding my squirrel tail to the top of the hook shank. With that, now I take scissors, come in, and cut close at an angle. As we said in class, everything is done on tapers. So I'll take thread forward, binding down the butts, and wrap back to my tie-off point. Execute a half hitch. Now we're going to tie in the underwing, which again is turkey. And as you can see in the tail, the tip was rolled up. On this one, it's going to be rolled down. We want our tips, first we align them so they're equal. We lay that on top, and we want one tip to go to the other. The underwing, tip of the underwing is going to go to the tip of the tail. Again, with a firm pinch up on top of the hook shank. I bring it down against my thread, up and over, and again, I tie it in with the upstroke. Locking my wing on top. Now I'm going to come in, take a few more wraps to bind it down. Take my working scissors, come in, and cut everything at an angle. Take our thread, binding down the butts, and wrap back to our tie-in point. Okay. Half hitch, locking in our wing. And now I'll pick up my slack, get ready for the next procedure. The first clip is a small tuft of deer hair. And again, as we did in class, we're going to cut close. As we did in class, we trimmed both ends. On this side, on this particular fly, we're only going to trim the butts because we want the tips. And we want the tips of our deer hair to roughly get back to the wing. Once I've measured it, take a firm grip, and I'm going to cut off quite a bit of the excess here. I only need 1/4 of an inch sticking out of my fingers. Stand my thread straight up, bring my deer hair to my thread, and again we're going to bring the thread all the way around. And then as we pull firmly, we let it go and allow it to spin. We're going to take our excess, push it back. I'm going to wrap in front of that, locking it in. And now we're going to start forming the head of our fly. And we do that by applying 3 or 4 bunches of deer hair in front. But this time, like as we tied in with the deer hair nymph, we're going to trim both sides because this is just for the head of the fly. I'm going to cut off my tips. Spin. Cut off the butts. And again, that helps us get rid of the fluff that's inside. Bring our material right to our thread. Bring the thread all the way around. softly. One full wrap, and as I pull, I'm going to allow it to spin around. Take up the tension, pull that back firmly up against our other bunch, and wrap in front. Half hitch. Okay, another bunch of deer hair. And as we said in class, we always want to cut close to the hide. Spin that around. Cut the tips off. Again, we're going to spin. Now we're going to clean up the butts. Stand our thread straight up. Bring that bunch right to our thread. Bring the thread all the way around. And then as we apply tension, we allow it to spin up. And I think I'm close enough to the eye to hook. The next bunch I think is going to push me off. Comb all those. I want to get all that deer hair back. And I'm going to form the head of the fly. Okay, just going to build this up a little bit. Thread. And execute a couple of half hitches like we do in class to lock in our thread on the head of our fly. And as usual, I always reach in underneath, cut close. Taking my serrated scissors, I begin to trim and form the head of the fly. Now we don't want to cut the tips going back. So I just try to get started cutting the tips, the butts off, start cleaning it up. And this is more like a flathead, kind of a very heavy set head of deer hair. And then it's primarily is to allow it to make a wake when you're working the fly in the surface of the water. Tom McNally, when he tied this was primarily was to make it awake just behind the head of the fly in order to indicate a wounded minnow to the feeding trout underneath. And again, this is just the shaping of the head. And I think that pretty much that's close enough for now. So I'm just going to glue it up. And I said before, in a lot of cases, we take the glue and we take it off the brush and we use our bodkin to transfer the glue to the head of our fly. And in this case, on this particular fly, you could have taken it out of the vise to trim the deer hair, but then I would have been off camera. Now that the head of the fly is glued, again, I'm going to reach in with my little towel, take all the glue off my bodkin, because if I forget, it'll just cut the thread the next time I use it. And there is our Muddler Minnow.